Have you ever wondered why men seem most consumed by the women who withhold, the ones who remain just out of reach? Why the mind obsesses over absence more than presence, and why the unavailable becomes irresistible? This paradox is not a trick of romance, but a deep psychological law, etched into both desire and the search for meaning. Viktor Frankl, who survived the unspeakable silence of the concentration camps, taught that humans are not destroyed by suffering itself, but by suffering without meaning. In the dance of attraction, the same truth applies. Men do not obsess because a woman is easy to possess, but because she awakens a hunger that points toward meaning he cannot yet name. Desire thrives in tension. A man does not crave what he already holds securely. He craves what eludes him. The moment certainty is granted, the fire weakens. The woman who knows this, not as manipulation, but as reality, embodies an archetype both feared and revered: the untouchable, the sovereign feminine who is desired precisely because she does not collapse into need. Her detachment is not coldness, but power. She stands not as an object to be conquered, but as a mirror reflecting his own incompleteness. Frankl argued that life constantly questions us, demanding our response. Likewise, the presence of such a woman becomes a question to the masculine psyche. Why does she not yield? Why does she not chase? Why does she not reassure? Each unanswered question becomes a fire in his chest, a gnawing that no explanation can extinguish. He is forced to wrestle with himself, to confront the emptiness her detachment exposes. And so he obsesses, not merely with her, but with what she awakens in him, the awareness that his meaning is not yet whole. Think of the archetypal pattern. In mythology, the hero does not crave what lies openly on the ground. He craves the treasure guarded by dragons, the jewel hidden in darkness, the maiden behind impenetrable walls. Why? Because only in striving, only in tension, only in struggle does meaning arise. Jung would say this treasure is projection, the anima, his inner feminine cast upon an external woman. She becomes larger than life, more than herself, because in her mystery, he sees his own soul. The harder she is to possess, the more he believes she contains the missing piece of himself. Ask yourself, how often have you softened your edges, offered too quickly, explained too much, only to feel his desire fade? How many times have you mistaken availability for love, only to be discarded once you were fully his? The forbidden truth is that what is too easily won is too easily forgotten. Men crave what they cannot have, not because they are cruel, but because their unconscious is searching for something that will demand transformation. The unattainable woman does not hand them comfort. She hands them a riddle. But the dark lesson is this: craving is not the same as loving. Obsession can burn without commitment. Longing can consume without responsibility. This is why Frankl's wisdom matters. He taught that meaning is not found in chasing pleasure or power, but in choosing responsibility, in embracing suffering with dignity. For men, the obsession with the unattainable can either degrade into bitterness or elevate into growth. Faced with her detachment, he must decide, will he rise to become worthy or retreat into resentment? The woman who understands this does not wield her detachment to toy with others. She wields it to protect her essence, to filter out the unworthy, to awaken only those who dare to meet her in depth. She knows her silence will attract projections, fantasies, accusations. She knows men will both desire and despise her for the same reason. She cannot be possessed. And she endures this because her worth is not in their response, but in her own sovereignty. Her silence is not emptiness, it is presence. Her absence is not rejection, it is invitation. She does not beg to be seen, for she already sees herself. She does not chase to be chosen, for she already chooses. And in this paradox lies her magnetic pull. Men crave her because she does not crave them. They long for her precisely because she can live without their longing. This dark lesson is uncomfortable. It dismantles the fairy tale of effortless love and reveals a harsher truth. Desire is born of distance, not closeness, of uncertainty, not clarity. To embody this truth is to embrace misunderstanding, to risk being called cold, arrogant, aloof. Yet beneath those names lies power, the power of detachment, the power of sovereignty, the power of meaning. But this is only the first layer. Beneath it lurks a deeper darkness. What happens when a man's craving turns to obsession, when his inability to possess her reveals not growth but his shadow? What does her detachment awaken in him that he cannot control? And what must she risk to embody this power without being consumed by it herself? These are the questions that lie ahead, the next turn in the labyrinth of desire and meaning. Imagine this. You're in a room where the air is heavy with silence. A man studies you, but what unsettles him most is not what you reveal, but what you withhold. He cannot decipher you fully. He cannot anchor himself in your availability. The ambiguity becomes unbearable and yet intoxicating. This is the secret many do not want to hear. The feminine mystery feeds masculine craving. The forbidden fruit of detachment awakens an ache far stronger than any words of reassurance ever could. The second layer of Frankl's dark lesson is this. Men do not only crave what they cannot have, they fear it. This fear is not of the woman herself, but of what she reflects back to them, their own insufficiency. Frankl taught that man is defined not by circumstances, but by choice, by the way he responds to the demands of life. The unattainable woman places this demand squarely before him. Will he rise, grow, and meet her in dignity? Or will he retreat, diminish, and lash out in resentment? The answer exposes his character more than hers. Jung revealed that every man carries within him the anima, the unconscious image of the feminine. When he encounters a woman he cannot possess, he projects this anima upon her. She becomes larger than herself, a figure of dream and myth. Her silence becomes a mystery, her distance a labyrinth, her detachment a test. She awakens in him both longing and terror because she represents not just herself, but his own shadowed soul. To pursue her is to pursue himself, and this is why the craving feels so overwhelming, because it is never truly about her alone. Ask yourself, how many times have you mistaken a man's obsession for love, when in truth he was wrestling with his own reflection in you? How many times have you been pursued not for who you are, but for what you symbolize? Freedom, mystery, the unreachable. This is the dangerous edge of craving. It is not always personal. Often it is archetypal. Often it is projection. And unless you recognize this, you risk confusing his hunger for self-discovery with genuine devotion. The woman who knows her worth discerns the difference. She recognizes when a man is captivated not by her essence, but by the void she awakens in him. She does not collapse into his projections, nor does she allow his obsession to dictate her value. She stands steady in detachment, knowing that his craving is his burden, not hers to carry. Frankl insisted that suffering can only become meaningful when embraced with responsibility. Likewise, male obsession only becomes love when it matures into responsibility, not when it rages blindly in longing. And yet, this dynamic is perilous, for obsession can breed resentment. Men who cannot endure the tension of craving may turn cruel, mocking what they cannot reach, devaluing what they once worshipped. History, literature, and psychology all bear witness to this duality. The unattainable woman becomes either goddess or demon in the male imagination, worshipped when she remains mysterious, vilified when she refuses to yield. This is the cost of detachment. She must be willing to be both desired and despised, adored and accused. But her strength lies precisely here. For in withstanding this tension, she becomes what Frankl described as the ultimate freedom, the ability to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. She does not bend when adored, nor collapse when condemned. She endures both with equal sovereignty, knowing that neither obsession nor rejection defines her. Her meaning lies deeper. The Stoics would have recognized this stance. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. The woman of detachment dyes her soul not with his cravings, not with his projections, not with his accusations, but with her own self-respect. She knows her value exists apart from his ability to grasp it. And because she knows this, she becomes a riddle he cannot solve, a fire he cannot extinguish. Do you dare to embody such sovereignty? To remain whole even when his eyes burn with obsession, even when his words cut with resentment? To allow his craving to exist without rushing to soothe it, to endure his projection without losing yourself to it? This is no easy path. It is a crucible, but within that crucible lies transformation, not only for him, but for you. For in his craving, he is forced to confront his emptiness. And in your detachment, you are forced to confront your strength. Together, these tensions create meaning, not because they resolve easily, but because they reveal the hidden truths of desire, freedom, and dignity. But there is another turn still deeper in this labyrinth. What happens when obsession grows not into love, but into dependence? When craving becomes compulsion, and the line between attraction and possession begins to blur? This is where the darkest lesson emerges, the dangerous beauty of suffering, the thin line between sacred longing and destructive desire. Some women become altars of obsession, not by choice, but by the projections laid upon them. A man who cannot reconcile his hunger with his fear begins to lose balance. What was once desire turns to fixation. What was once attraction curdles into dependence. Here lies the third and most dangerous truth. Craving without meaning becomes compulsion. Viktor Frankl warned that when the human will to meaning is frustrated, an existential vacuum emerges, a hollowness that breeds neurosis, addiction, and despair. In relationships, this vacuum can manifest as obsessive attachment. The man who has not found inner meaning latches onto the woman he cannot fully have, imagining that she alone will fill the void. But she cannot. No one can. His craving grows darker because it is not truly about her. It is about escaping his emptiness. Jung described this dynamic as inflation of the anima. The woman becomes larger than life in his imagination. She is no longer human, but divine or demonic. If she smiles, he feels saved. If she withdraws, he feels condemned. This is not love. This is idolatry. And idolatry always collapses under its own weight, because no mortal can bear the burden of being someone else's salvation. Ask yourself, have you ever felt the weight of being someone's everything, their sole obsession, their fragile hope? At first it flatters, but soon it suffocates. Because beneath the devotion lies desperation, and desperation is not love. It is fear disguised as passion. Frankl reminds us that meaning must be discovered in responsibility, not projected onto another's existence. The man who fails to take responsibility for his emptiness will attempt to outsource it to the woman he desires. She becomes his escape from himself. The woman of detachment senses this. She feels when his eyes are not seeing her essence but using her as a mirror for his void. She does not yield to such pressure, for to yield would be to abandon herself. She allows his obsession to burn against the walls of her silence, but she does not let it consume her. She knows his suffering can only become meaningful if he confronts it, not if she rescues him from it. To soothe his compulsion would be to deny him the opportunity for growth. Here lies the paradox. Obsession can destroy, but it can also awaken. If the man chooses responsibility, his craving becomes a crucible in which he discovers himself. He learns that what he longed for in her was a reflection of what he lacked in himself. Purpose, strength, meaning. If he refuses responsibility, his obsession festers into bitterness, manipulation, or even cruelty. The same fire that could forge him into something greater burns him into ashes instead. And what of the woman? She is tested just as deeply. To hold her sovereignty in the face of obsession is to endure projection, misunderstanding, and at times, vilification. Men will call her heartless, arrogant, cruel. They will punish her for refusing to collapse into their void. But she must remain. Frankl endured the cruelty of being blamed by life itself, imprisoned for crimes he did not commit, deprived of everything. And yet he discovered freedom in the one place no one could touch: his attitude. The detached woman walks the same path. She cannot control his obsession, but she can control her response. And her response is silence, dignity, distance. The Stoics taught that what is external belongs not to us. Reputation, affection, approval, these are outside our control. The woman who embodies this wisdom does not chase what is not hers to command. She tends to her inner fortress, where her self-respect cannot be broken. And it is precisely this unbreakable quality that keeps him bound, for he cannot possess what refuses possession. Do you see the dark beauty here? The suffering of obsession is not meaningless. It is a teacher. It reveals the truth of both souls, the man's hunger for meaning, the woman's hunger for freedom. If both embrace the responsibility of this suffering, obsession transforms into depth. But if either runs from it, it becomes poison. Desire without detachment enslaves. Detachment without meaning isolates. Only when suffering is carried with dignity does craving become sacred. Yet the story goes deeper still. For what happens when the woman herself begins to feel the pull of longing? When her own detachment is tested by her desire? Can she remain sovereign when her heart aches? When her own emptiness whispers for relief? This is the crucible where true feminine power is forged, not in denying desire, but in holding it without collapse. Some women imagine detachment as cold indifference, but true detachment is far more demanding. It is not the absence of longing, but the courage to hold longing without surrendering sovereignty. When her heart aches, when the silence feels unbearable, when she too feels the pull of desire, the detached woman faces her greatest test. For it is easy to stand firm when one does not care. It is infinitely harder when one cares deeply, yet still refuses to collapse. Viktor Frankl wrote that everything can be taken from a human being except one thing, the last of the freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. This truth does not vanish in the realm of love. A woman cannot always choose whether a man stays or leaves, whether he desires or withdraws, but she can always choose her stance, whether to cling in desperation or to stand in dignity. That choice is the essence of her silent power. Here lies the fourth truth. Men crave not simply because she withholds, but because she remains whole in the presence of her own longing. He senses her heart beats, her soul feels, her body remembers, but she does not break. This paradox bewilders him. How can she want and yet not beg? How can she desire and yet not lose herself? It is this tension that fuels his obsession, because it reveals to him a freedom he does not yet know within himself. Jung described individuation as the process of integrating all parts of the psyche, light and shadow, desire and restraint, love and fear. The sovereign woman walks this path in real time. She does not deny her attraction, nor does she let it enslave her. She integrates it, holds it, transforms it, and in doing so, she embodies wholeness. This wholeness is what the masculine unconscious longs for most. He craves her not because she is incomplete, but because she radiates completion. Ask yourself, do you mistake strength for numbness? Do you imagine that the women most desired are those who feel nothing? Or do you recognize that true power comes not from avoiding emotion, but from carrying it with dignity? The woman who knows her worth does not deny the ache of her desire. She allows it to live within her, but she does not let it define her choices. She chooses herself before she chooses him. And that choice becomes magnetic because it mirrors the deepest freedom Frankl discovered, the ability to remain free even within chains. But the masculine psyche is torn by this revelation. On one hand, he craves the unattainable woman because she embodies the mystery he cannot master. On the other, he resents her for awakening in him the truth of his own incompleteness. This is why men often oscillate between worship and contempt. When she remains beyond reach, she is goddess. When she refuses to collapse, she becomes witch. The archetypal pendulum swings, not because of her essence, but because of his inability to reconcile his craving with responsibility. The woman of sovereignty must endure this pendulum without letting it dictate her being. She must accept that obsession is double-edged. It elevates and degrades, desires and despises. If she seeks only adoration, she will abandon herself the moment contempt arrives. But if she accepts both with equanimity, she becomes unshakable. Frankl taught that meaning is found not in pleasure or power, but in suffering born with dignity. The sovereign feminine applies this truth in love. She bears misunderstanding, accusation, even vilification, without surrendering her essence. The Stoics knew this too. Epictetus warned that we suffer more from our desire for control than from the events themselves. The detached woman embodies this wisdom. She does not demand control over his craving, nor over his projections. She releases them, knowing they belong to him, not to her. What belongs to her is her stance, her response, her freedom. And so she remains, steady as flame in the wind, neither extinguished by adoration nor consumed by resentment. Do you dare such steadiness? Do you dare to feel deeply without losing yourself? To love without begging? To desire without collapsing? This is the higher calling of feminine strength. To carry passion without chains, to hold longing without surrender, to embrace freedom without pride. Few can walk this razor's edge, but those who do become unforgettable. Not because they gave everything, but because they withheld the one thing that matters most, their sovereignty. Yet the labyrinth deepens, for if craving without meaning becomes compulsion, and detachment without love becomes pride, what lies beyond both? What is the final resolution, the ultimate transformation, when desire is neither denied nor indulged, but transcended? This is where Frankl's darkest lesson shines brightest, where suffering itself is not avoided, but transfigured into meaning. At the deepest level, craving is not about possession at all. It is about meaning. A man may chase a woman with relentless hunger, yet beneath the pursuit lies a hidden question. What does this longing reveal about me? Viktor Frankl taught that life does not ask us what we want from it. It asks us what it expects of us. The unattainable woman, by her very presence, becomes that question. She confronts him with the task of responsibility. Will he transform his desire into growth, or will he let it devour him as compulsion? Here lies the fifth truth. Craving without responsibility destroys, but craving with responsibility transforms. When a man accepts that his longing is not hers to fix, but his to confront, obsession becomes a catalyst for meaning. He discovers that what he sought in her was never merely her body, her silence, or her absence. It was the confrontation with himself, his emptiness, his fragility, his hunger for purpose. In facing this, he awakens. In denying it, he collapses. Jung revealed that individuation demands the integration of shadow. The man obsessed with the unattainable woman is, in truth, obsessed with his own shadow. She becomes the mirror in which he sees the parts of himself he cannot reconcile, his weakness, his dependency, his longing for completion. If he projects, he blames her, calling her cruel, manipulative, heartless. If he accepts responsibility, he begins to integrate, and through integration, he grows. Thus, her detachment is not cruelty, but initiation. She becomes the threshold through which he must pass if he wishes to meet himself. But the sixth truth belongs not to him, but to her. For a woman cannot embody sovereignty without cost. To remain whole in the face of obsession is to endure endless projections. To refuse collapse is to be misunderstood again and again. She must be willing to be named witch, goddess, angel, demon, all for the same reason. She will not yield her essence to soothe another's emptiness. Frankl endured the hatred of fate itself, stripped to nothing, yet he chose to remain free in spirit. Likewise, the sovereign feminine endures the storms of obsession without surrendering the throne of her dignity. Ask yourself, can you bear to be misnamed, mislabeled, misjudged, yet remain true? Can you endure the fire of desire, your own and his, without abandoning your freedom? For this is what makes the unattainable woman magnetic. Not her distance alone, but her refusal to betray herself, even when loneliness tempts her, even when longing aches in her bones. She chooses silence over pleading, sovereignty over desperation, freedom over validation. And in that choice, she awakens craving not only in him, but in all who glimpse her. The seventh and final truth is this: transcendence is the ultimate seduction. Craving binds, detachment isolates, but transcendence liberates. To transcend is to neither cling nor withdraw, but to love without chains, to give without fear, to remain free even in intimacy. Frankl called this self-transcendence, the movement beyond ego, beyond self-interest, into meaning itself. The woman who embodies this does not toy with obsession, nor does she shrink from love. She allows both to exist, yet she remains sovereign. Picture her at the end of this path. She has endured silence, carried suffering, resisted collapse, and borne projection. Now she loves, but her love is not desperate, it is chosen. She gives, but her giving does not empty her, it overflows. She walks beside men, but she is not defined by them. She has become whole, and wholeness is the greatest mystery of all. Men crave her not because she withholds, but because she embodies what every soul seeks, meaning. And so the dark lesson of Viktor Frankl becomes radiant truth. Men crave what they cannot have, because the unattainable awakens the will to meaning. But the sovereign feminine does not exist to soothe that craving. She exists to reveal it, to hold it, to remain free in the midst of it. For in her freedom lies her power, and in her power lies her peace. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.